My first game this week is going to be Notre Dame at Duke. We talked about the ACC earlier. Here's another chance for Duke to get a marquee victory, beating Clemson earlier, getting Notre Dame at your place. I think the timing of this game is curious to me. If I'm Notre Dame, do you get a motivated team a week after a disappointing loss? Is there a little bit of a hangover? I think if you're Duke, you took care of business last week against UConn. They basically done exactly what they needed to do since that game against Clemson, and now they get another chance to knock off a marquee opponent. I think one question that I had while studying this game is, like, what does Duke do well? And the funny thing is, like, they're just really solid across the board. So, like, if you haven't watched Duke this year, I mean, they're first in the ACC in scoring defense, success rate very high on offense. I think 17th nationally. No opponent has scored more than 14 against this defense. So I think just a really solid Duke team that has a quarterback in Riley Leonard who does it all, whether it's on the ground, through the air. They don't hit a lot of big plays. So I think if you're Notre Dame, can you get them behind the chains? And if you're Duke, you want to stay on schedule. And then I think from the timing standpoint, I want to see if Notre Dame comes into this game motivated, or if there's a little bit of a hangover from last week's game, because on paper, Notre Dame is the better team.
Yeah, I mean, across the board, although the quarterback makes a big difference for Duke. Duke, fifth in the nation in yards per play defense, 4.11 yards per play. Notre Dame, sixth, 4.2 yards per play. Fourth place, of course, is Ohio State. So we knew those two were great. By the way, if you combine their two defensive yards per play, Duke and Notre Dame, you get 8.31 yards per play. That is still better than number 133 Nevada. Just want to point that out. If you combined the two defenses in the Notre Dame-Duke game, they're still better on a yards per play basis than Nevada.
I do think
almost 9 yards per play.
There, speaking of defense for Duke, I do think there is one area where if you're watching this game on Saturday, if Notre Dame is doing this, it's good. Keep in mind, Clemson had 213 rushing yards against Duke. So Notre Dame's offensive line estimate getting on track here, that would be a bad sign if I'm Duke, if they're chunking off some big yards on Saturday night.
Yeah, and those numbers, by the way, dominant against Connecticut, dominant against Northwestern, dominant against Lafayette. Not exactly murderer's row. To your point, the worst defensive showing both on the ground, but also in a yards per play standpoint was against Clemson. They were Clemson was inside the 15-yard line all game. I don't expect Sam Hartman and Estime to make those mistakes, although they couldn't convert on fourth down last week. So we'll see. I like Notre Dame in this one. I'm curious about the mental edge, to your point as well. Is this a good place for Notre Dame to be? I think the fact that game day is in Durham and that the whole country is now watching Duke and paying attention to Duke and that we're all going to be, watching game day or whatever, like, I think that actually benefits Notre Dame. Because if this was just another game at noon, kickoff, kind of a sleepy crowd in a sleepy stadium, and there wasn't much fanfare and game day's not there, I think it would be easier for Notre Dame to have the letdown of, oh my God, for 35 years we've been working to try to win that game and we just lost it on the last play of the game, to allow Ohio State to beat you twice, right?
Right.
And I think the fact that so much focus is on this and on Duke, I think that allows them to overcome that mentally. So that's kind of why I like Notre Dame.
Sold out Duke crowd on Saturday night. Like you said, game day is there, so a big time atmosphere for Duke. I mean, I think just a sign too of how far Duke has come under Mike Elko to be in this position in his second year after dramatically improving last year. So I like the Fighting Irish to win as well.
Future Arkansas head football coach Mike Elko. Future Michigan State head football coach Mike Elko. Pick one. He's going to be the top candidate for a lot of these teams. Newly renovated Wallace Wade, right? Didn't they get some upgrades a couple years ago? So it'll be in good shape, good condition. The house has been fixed up a little bit, for the Irish to come into town. We'll see. Notre Dame Duke game day. You sure can't believe that's a thing, but you know what? You talked about Duke all preseason. I'm the one who said the schedule's too hard. Don't think they can replicate it. They've already overachieved with the win over Clemson. If they beat Notre Dame and have a win over Clemson and Notre Dame in their first 5, all bets are off for this Duke Blue Devils team. Mike Elko, Riley Leonard, great stuff so far.